Let's finish strong with our top buyout candidates for 2020 with the final division we're going to look at, which is, of course, the Pacific. For one last time, trying to make these buyouts as realistic as possible, not just immediately grabbing the player that's making the most money. And these are not official predictions. These are literally just, if you had to buy somebody out, this is the one that I think makes the most sense. Let's go Pacific Division. We'll start with the Anaheim Ducks. They ended the 2020 season with $2.8 million in cap space, so plenty of room to move around. But there is a pretty strong buyout candidate on the roster, and that is David Backes. He does play multiple forward positions, but he's 36 years old, still getting paid that $6 million that I believe the Boston Bruins signed him to. He's got a year left on that deal. I really looked hard at Ryan Kesler for this one, but Kesler was on LTIR all season. It's a real question mark as to whether Kesler ever plays again. So in the absence of selecting Ryan Kesler, who would very easily have been the choice here, I'm going to go with David Backes. It will save the Ducks $1 million against the cap if they did decide to do it. They're not killing for cap space, so maybe something like this doesn't happen, and maybe you can talk somebody into taking on David Backes as like a rental player at the deadline, but I think it's still a pretty solid buyout option. Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes, a team that finished the 2020 season with $0 in cap space, all kinds of LTIR, no actual space. Michael Grabner is my choice here. He does play either side of the wing. He's incredibly fast, a shootout specialist. He's got a fairly decent shot, but as a Coyote, he's only put 27 points on the board in 87 NHL games. It really has not worked out for him in Arizona. And he's 32 years old, only has 1 year left on a $3.35 million AAV. So he's not going to save the team a ton of money in a buyout. It will save them $1.2 million, which for a team that has zero cap space, that space is important. A Grabner buyout, I don't know exactly how much trade value Michael Grabner might have right now, so a buyout seems like it's fairly realistic to me. Let's come back to Canada now. Calgary Flames finishing the season last year with less than $1 million in cap space, and this was a layup. This was the poster child for buyouts, and it's Milan Lucic. That should come as no surprise to anybody. 3 years left on the $6 million deal that the Edmonton Oilers signed him to. He doesn't drive the offense. Right now, he is an overpaid third-line winger. And I like Milan Lucic, but he's making way too much money for what he actually provides on the ice. I don't know what he provides in the locker room in terms of leadership, but I can't imagine that it's worth that price tag. And that's going to save the Calgary Flames $1.5 million against the cap by buying him out. I don't think you find an adequate trade partner for Lucic at that money. So buy him out, give him an opportunity to find a job somewhere else. Let's stay in Alberta and look at the Edmonton Oilers, ending last season with less than $525,000 in cap space. That is less than a roster spot in the NHL. And I think this buyout comes from the back end. It's Chris Russell for me. 33 years old, 1 year left on his deal at $4 million. Maybe you can swing him as a deadline rental, but it's not a huge cap savings either. There really was not much option on the Edmonton Oilers in terms of buyout opportunities. This is only going to save them $500,000. It only saves $500,000, so maybe it's not even worth it to bother, but Chris Russell would be the buyout candidate for me from Edmonton. We go to the Los Angeles Kings, one of the more affluent teams in the league in terms of their cap space. $6.9 million is what they ended the season with, so they're obviously in no rush to shred any money. If they were, Jeff Carter, unfortunately, is my selection. Mostly plays at center, can play a little bit on the wing. He's 35 years old, still got 2 more years on his deal where he's getting paid well north of $5 million a year. It's not a fantastic buyout because Jeff Carter is still an effective player. Whether he will continue to be an effective player and continue to be worth the money he's being paid is anybody's guess. But as far as last year goes, he was still an effective NHL player, and it does only save them $1.3 million against the cap. So for a team that's not killing for money, this would be a bad buyout. And I certainly don't think that would happen. You might even find a trade partner for Jeff Carter if you're willing to keep, maybe 50% of his salary. But that was really the only option I could come up with for the LA Kings. I thought maybe Jonathan Quick, but that didn't make much sense to me. We've only got 3 teams left to look at. All 3 of these teams would be what I would consider to be cap teams. All 3 of them ended the season with less than $1 million, well less than $1 million in cap space. We're going to start in San Jose, and this is going to be one of the more contentious buyouts and another one of those ones that I don't expect a lot of people to agree with. So San Jose ended the season with less than $650,000 in cap space. So less than a league minimum roster spot worth of cap space. The person I'm going to have them buy out is Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Crazy to think that they might do that, considering they just recently re-signed him. He's got 6 years left on his deal at $7 million. You don't give a player $7 million for nothing. However, he is 33, which means at the end of that contract, he's going to be 39, 40. It's a decent thought. I don't think this would be a good buyout in reality, but man, for a cap team to potentially save $9.9 million against the salary cap, if you want to be competitive, if you want to extend that window of a guy like Joe Thornton, or even of a guy like Brent Burns, who's starting to get up there a little bit in age, if you want to try to extend that window, assuming Martin Jones isn't really completely a sieve and can kind of come back a little bit, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, it's going to hurt, but it's going to open up a ton of money for your franchise. Our last Canadian stop is on the West Coast for the Vancouver Canucks. They ended the season with less than $50,000 in cap space. So very, very, very little space for the Vancouver Canucks to work with. And my buyout here is Antoine Roussel. He's only plays on the left wing. He just hit 30 this season. He's got 2 years left at $3 million. Tyler Myers was a player that I was maybe looking at in this spot, but I think between the two of them, which one of the two is more likely to really make an impact for your franchise, or at their very best, who makes the biggest impact for the franchise? And very clearly in both cases, I think that's Tyler Myers. So Antoine Roussel was just sort of how the coin landed here. He's 30 years old. Again, 2 years left at $3 million. You can buy him out and save $1.4 million against the cap, which could very well help you with some of these younger players when you eventually have to sign them to bridge deals or longer, bigger contracts. So it's a buyout that I think, honestly, could very well happen because Roussel is not exactly someone that drives the team. And the very last team is the Vegas Golden Knights. Only been around for a few years, already in salary cap issues. At the end of the year, they finished with less than $325,000 in cap space. So not a ton of room to work with. And they have a goaltender who, man, if Robin Lehner is the guy, or if you look at the pending upcoming free agent goaltenders and look at one of them, like say a Braden Holtby perhaps, and say that's the guy, you gotta buy out Marc-Andre Fleury. And it's crazy to say that. It's crazy to buy out Marc-Andre Fleury, right? Not so much. Not by the money. I mean, look, 35 years old. He's got 2 years left on his deal at $7 million. If he's not going to be the guy for the next couple of years, if you've got your eye on somebody else, you can't keep Marc-Andre Fleury as a backup. And nobody's going to trade for Marc-Andre Fleury to be a backup. So unless someone looks at Fleury in a way that you don't, you got to buy him out. And it's going to save you $4.1 million against the cap. So if we assume, and this is a full-fledged assumption, if we assume that the Vegas Golden Knights don't necessarily look at Marc-Andre Fleury like he's the guy for the next couple of years, I've seen crazier things than a starting goaltender get bought out. There you go, folks. Feel free to light me on fire in the various comment sections, depending on who I decided to buy out from your team. Again, I forced myself to choose one from every franchise, so if you didn't like my choice, That's okay. You can go to capfriendly.com, use their buyout calculator, and you can make your own choices, and you can see what you think is going to set up your franchise best for success. I put a little bit of time into this, so I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled by the water and other various liquids I have down here so I don't dehydrate. And I guess we're going to have to start looking at maybe making some predictions for this weirdo tournament that they're deciding to do to fulfill their TV contracts. That might be coming next.